Good morning, everybody. My name's David Clark. I'm the Technical Director at the Railway Industry Association, which is the UK trade association for the supply chain in the UK. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you this morning to the third of these Department of International Trade webinars on the theme of Catch the Train. I'd also like to thank our sponsor Santander for supporting the programme of events. Just to add a little bit to what was said before about the Q&A, there's a chat function for Q&A. Please use that throughout the as you're listening to the speakers. If you have a question, just pop it in the chat. I'll pick those questions out. And if time allows, I'll ask the presenters at the end of their presentation. But we also have a Q&A session at the end, so I'll definitely get those questions in. So please don't hesitate. Get your questions into the chat. So moving straight on, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, who is Richard Mensah, Director for Trade and Investment in Central and Eastern Europe at our host, the Department for International Trade. Can I hand over to you, Rich, love?
Just unmuted myself there. Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much, David. It's an absolute pleasure to be speaking in front of such a diverse and innovative audience this morning. It is also exceptional to see such high level of interest in rail innovation and development projects being carried out across the whole of Europe. Today, for this meeting, we are privileged to have a remarkable selection of those projects from Finland, the Baltics, and Portugal. Our Catch the Train webinar series is a great initiative that brings together UK rail capabilities with opportunities in the different parts of Europe. Today's event, as David said, is the third of the series. So on behalf of the DIT teams across Europe who I'm representing today, I would like to thank our partner organizations, the Railway Industry Association and Santander, for their valuable support in the organization of this webinar and the previous webinars as well. The pandemic has shaken the world's economy to its core. It has presented huge challenges for governments and businesses alike. And for obvious reasons, it has tested our resilience and our adaptability to the limits. With such a challenging backdrop, free trade and global partnerships are more important than ever. Seizing the opportunities of new partnerships between the UK and European markets is just as important. Railways across Europe are close to full capacity and are facing a comprehensive digital transformation. We need innovative solutions to unlock capacity, boost performance, improve safety, and enhance the passenger experience. With governments across Europe facing the same challenges, collaboration is key to unlocking the innovation that is really needed for the rail sector. We are currently working very closely with individual governments across Europe to reaffirm our support for future development plans. We would like to promote two key things. The first is the UK's capabilities and our experience in rail innovation and research. Second is the lessons learned from these experiences. Railways form the backbone of today's sustainable transport networks and is key to achieving our collective clean growth ambitions. This is, of course, a central focus for the UK as we prepare to host the UN Climate Change Conference, COP26, later this year in Glasgow. I was absolutely thrilled to hear that Network Rail will be showcasing the UK's first hydrogen-powered train at the COP conference. The Hydroflex was developed by Birmingham University Centre for Railway Research and Education, who are of course represented here today, in partnership with rolling stock owner and asset manager Porterbrook. This is an excellent example of how the UK is at the forefront of developing new, modern, green rail systems. The UK's significant investment and support in rail infrastructure over the years has fostered an open and competitive marketplace in a demanding domestic market that is the UK. This has, of course, driven new products and service innovation and has uniquely placed UK and UK-based businesses to share and assist rail industry stakeholders internationally. I speak from experience because in the previous role, I worked at the UK's Department for Transport. The UK has a world-class capability in developing and implementing modern digital solutions. For example, London Underground was the pioneer in the development of automatic rail operations. Victoria Line, which is part of the Underground network, was the first automated line in the world. Now, with Thameslink Railway, we are also implementing the world's first automatic train operation on a mainline passenger railway. I hope some of you have also heard about the East Coast Digital Program. The ECDP, as is also known, will be the first intercity digital railway in the UK, fitting trains with the latest in-cab signalling technology. Much like these successful projects at home, the UK rail sector has worked with partners and clients around the world. The Department for International Trade is committed to providing the support British firms need to build new bonds of trade across Europe. I am really encouraged to hear of the increased interest from UK companies, and I look forward to seeing some of these projects come into fruition. As the world recovers from COVID, I think it's critically important for Britain and Europe to forge ever stronger bonds of prosperity, diversifying our business networks and building our industry ties. So let's go forward now, side by side, to build a bigger, better, brighter and bolder partnerships between our nations in the years and months to come. To paraphrase our Prime Minister, let's build back better using British expertise. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rich Love, for an excellent introduction, reminding us that UK is open for business and ready to collaborate. And as you say, let's build back better internationally in the wake of the pandemic. So thank you, Rich Love. I'm moving on now to our next speaker, Alex Burrows, Director, Birmingham Centre for Railway Research and Education, BCRRE. And Alex, you're going to talk about the rail innovation landscape, rail research and introducing innovation. Over to you.
Thank you very much, David, and thank you to the organisers, and thank you to Rich Love as well for the special mention in your presentation there. I wasn't expecting that, and we didn't. There was no special request for that. That was done off the cuff. So thank you very much indeed. I may mention that in the next 12 minutes that I have allocated. So. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Alex Burrows from the University of Birmingham. As David mentioned, we're Birmingham Centre for Rail Research and Education, BCRE, part of the School of Engineering at the University of Birmingham, and one of the largest specialist railway research, education and innovation centres, probably globally. Let's say it is. My brief agenda for the next 10 or so minutes, I want to cover off some theoretical basis really for introducing innovation to rail, which will hopefully set a very good basis for the following speakers afterwards. I'm then going to mention the UK Rail Research and Innovation Network, and as this is to do with railways, we'll go by an acronym, if that's okay. So I'll call that UCRIN. And then I'm going to mention some practical examples at the end to hopefully give a more tangible feel for what I've been talking about. So to start with, introducing innovation to rail, and some basics to begin with. So I think we hear the word innovation used an awful lot, and it can get a little tiresome at times. I find myself almost nervous at mentioning innovation on the basis that people will have a certain skepticism now, but innovation is important. And when I use the phrase, I like to think of it around a new idea or method, or the use of those new ideas and methods. And I think a really important part, actually, when we talk definitions, is successful innovation. Because let's remember, we want to succeed. That's why we're doing innovation. We want to realize benefit from those new ideas or methods. So my focus is on successful innovation. And why are we innovating? So generally, there are one of several reasons. We can be addressing major challenges. I think a topical one is around climate change and decarbonisation. We could be looking to more effectively exploit technologies that we know exist And another major area, I suppose, major topic for rail around innovation is around the digitalization, so around the development and exploitation of digital systems. Another reason for innovating is to meet evolving customer needs and expectations. And this is perhaps a more subtle but extremely important one. And again, it's a topical point. When I say meet evolving customer needs and expectations, I think from rail, this is something we ought to focus perhaps more on, where those first two are more obvious. This one is around how rail can look more, can provide a more compelling offer and demonstrate to customers, be they passengers or freights users, that rail is a modern, clean, effective form of transport. And where there is an awful lot of buzz around things like autonomous cars, that we don't want rail to be seen as perhaps backwards technology in comparison. And so it's meeting those expectations so that we stand shoulder to shoulder with other modes of transport as equally technologically competent and capable. Another area, a fourth area for innovating, is a relatively obvious one perhaps, but a very firm reminder that we innovate to reduce costs, to improve our performance, to increase efficiency, and a fourth part of that, of course, is to ensure maximum safety as well. So those are my broad areas of motivation for innovation. Now, in this one, one area I'd like to just show is the innovation cycle, the innovation process, which starts out with an idea and hopefully ends up with that new idea or method becoming a successful innovation being exploited. And so if we look at the bottom on the x-axis, we have there what we call the rail industry readiness levels. And you can see on the left RIRL1 conception, and that essentially is the fundamental, the idea, as it were, the light bulb moment. And that process rolls through to RIRL9, which is whole life management. And that essentially is the new idea or method successfully rolled out to market, being deployed, and then importantly being monitored and adapted, because we see innovation, it's not just this left to right linear process, it's actually a continuous cycle. So we are always working on big ideas, we then take them through development, we then look to deploy them, and importantly we have that feedback loop that closes the circle, that looks at those technologies, those ideas or methods in action, and looks for that continuous improvement thereafter. So very much see innovation as a continuous cycle of development. And that's a point I want to emphasize, where we can have these lists of rail industry research levels, we can break them down into those areas of research, deployment and development, development and deployment, but that ongoing learning as well as a key part of this, because that's really the bedrock of innovation, is generating ideas, developing knowledge, exploring, testing those ideas, implementing those ideas, and then learning from them to keep that continuous circle of development going. Another important part of innovation, though, of course, is I see it as a formula, but you need the idea on one hand. You also have the need on the other side as well. And where railway research, not just the universities, but innovators, the broader rail supply industry are coming up with the ideas, they're looking at the technologies, they're developing these ideas and methods, testing them, and trying to pull them through to develop them to market side. On the demand side, we have the market that actually puts the requirement, the motivation in place for innovating. So if we go back to those reasons for innovating that I mentioned earlier, major challenges was one of them, for example, around decarbonisation. The market, and be they governments, be they operators, be they infrastructure managers and customers, the market wants to see solutions being brought to market that increase the rate of decarbonisation of the railway. And that puts the pressure back to the supply side to come up with those answers. We need to see technology, we need to see innovations that are going to support the rail industry and the governance, their requirement for increasing decarbonisation. And to me, this emphasises the importance of collaboration. We want to see greater collaboration across the supply side be that supply industry, innovators, universities, and on the demand side as well, the government, the operators, the infrastructure managers, so that we have focused collaborative innovation that is driving the right focus on development, the right focus on research and development, that is delivering the new ideas and methods that can be successfully implemented that the market wants to see as well. So for me, a big part of innovation is that formula of innovation plus need in a collaborative format to deliver successful innovation. And so topically, that brings me on to the UK Rail Research and Innovation Network, UCRIN. And what this is a powerful collaboration between academia and industry, founded only 3 years ago, but already building up the membership of both universities and of industrial partners, the actors from across the rail supply industry, both on the supply side, those undertaking the research and development, and those on the market side, the demand side, looking to collaborate to drive the direction and outputs of rail research and innovation. And this has been a successful exercise so far. We've attracted significant funding, both from the UK government and from private investment from the rail supply industry, to accelerate the rate and outputs of research, development and innovation activity in collaboration between academia and industry, using UCRIN as a badge, as a method for motivating the supply industry and universities to work together to focus their target outputs that meet market demand, both from government and from operators and infrastructure managers. Now, I'm personally in charge of the Introducing Innovation theme within UCRIN. We're part of the Centre of Excellence in Digital Systems within UCRIN, but we have this broader remit as well around introducing innovation. I just wanted to highlight the headlines. Obviously, we could go into these in huge amounts of detail, but I don't have time for that today. But I do want to highlight the breadth of what we're looking at. So we're looking at innovation models and systems engineering, benefits identification and realization, and of course that's a key part of my focus on this successful innovation, is actually seeing real outputs, real value generated by your innovation activity. We also have a major focus on testing and validation, and a personal thing for me actually is around this idea of it's all very well doing the technology development and having an output to bring to market, but I think we all have experiences we can name of great developments failing when they have their first impact with reality, with the actual operating railway, and we want to see less of that and much more of a testing, validation, verification activity done at the end of the innovation process, so that we can literally plug and play our new products, our new ideas and methods that have become deployable, that they are deployed successfully from the get-go. That's a hugely important part. Just briefly also, we're looking at innovation landscape, foresight, horizon scanning, of course. We're looking at how we can accelerate the process of innovation, so perhaps take more risk, but deliver more reward more quickly. And finally, around business and operating models as well, because a huge challenge we face, that we recognise, is around the appetite and risk for innovation, ensuring it can be delivered successfully. So just to finish off now with 3 brief examples of innovation that we've undertaken as University of Birmingham. The first is around the West Midlands Rail Digital Twin, focusing here on an example of collaboration from the supply side, which would be us as the University of Birmingham, with the demand side, so with Network Rail, the infrastructure manager, with Transport for the West Midlands, the government authority for the region, and with West Midlands Trains, the train operator, to develop a digital twin of the network in order to then be able to simulate designs, for example, for disruption management, for new timetabling, for new methods for train control systems. This will come in useful for the Commonwealth Games next year, I can assure you. My second example, Rich Love already mentioned, Not stealing my thunder, of course, but Hydroflex, the UK's first hydrogen train, that was a collaboration again between University of Birmingham and our industrial partner Porterbrook. And in 3 years, we've gone from cracking idea to taking the train up to COP26 in Glasgow this November, which is a hugely exciting development, one that I and my team are very proud of and looking forward to seeing. And my final example is around digirail, which is funded by the European Regional Development Fund, and is a partnership between the University of Birmingham and SMEs in the rail sector, or those adjacent to the rail sector who want to find out more and see if the rail sector is applicable to them as well. We provide our expertise, our knowledge and our facilities in a funded manner to then provide support to SMEs to help them understand the opportunities available and hopefully successfully enter the rail sector. And on that, I'm going to finish very promptly, David, and hand back to you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Alex. I'm going to ask you one quick question. I mean, thanks for a great overview, and it's really encouraging to see the level of activity in innovation, and also how quickly things are moving, given that Ukraine was only founded three years ago, and what a fantastic collaboration. There's a great question here come through from Daniela Phillips. Really interesting presentation. Thanks, Alex. What do you think rail can learn from other industries in terms of innovation? So do you want to give one quick answer to that, and maybe save the detail for the end? But what's your first thoughts on that?
My immediate reaction is rail is too fragmented. We don't work together as a whole industry, but hopefully that's going to be changing in the near future as well. And secondly, we don't coordinate amongst ourselves to look at the bigger picture of what is for the greater good of the rail industry, where perhaps aerospace and automotive are much stronger at going to governments and saying we want to see this happen, we want to support that, we want to work collectively for the greater good of the industry. We don't do that as well in rail, and I think we need to learn how to put our individual differences to one side to look at the bigger picture of what's going to benefit rail.
Good point. I think also they know where to collaborate and where to compete.
Yes.
So for example, you can look under the bonnet of a Ford and find a Peugeot engine, for example, and that's because they don't feel the need to compete on powertrain, but they collaborate on that. Can I just prime you to say something about World Congress on Rail Research when we get to the Q&A at the end? Yeah?
Very good point, David. Thank you.
So, Alex, thank you very much. If you can imagine a virtual round of applause from the audience, really appreciate that. Moving on rapidly to our next speaker, it gives me pleasure to introduce Andy Billington, Innovation and Sustainability Specialist at Rail Baltica. And we're now going to look at a real project. So how do you innovate in greenfield projects such as Rail Baltica? Over to you, Andy.
Thanks, David, and good morning, everybody, from a very sunny Tallinn. So we, as the project coordinator, are in a unique position of developing a complete greenfield infrastructure, looking at what is going to be necessary for the future, and looking at how best we can make use of that, either to anticipate future business needs or the wishes of future rail operators or society in general. So a quick overview of the project itself. We're developing 870 kilometers of complete greenfield infrastructure. That will, obviously on top of that, there will be maintenance facilities, there'll be with areas within terminals. The entire line is standard gauge 1435, and the existing rail in the region is all 1520 for historical reasons. It will all be ELTMS, level 2 baseline to be determined, but it'll probably be the most current at the time of CCS deployment, and possibly FRMCS. Marco is going to be speaking about FRMCS, so I will not tread into that. The line will be electrified, 25 kilovolt. Maximum length for freight trains will be 1050 meters, with axle loads of up to 25 tons. And the design speed for faster passenger trains is 249 kilometers an hour, and 120 for freight. There will also be regional services, which we anticipate at around 160. We're also using the slightly larger Swedish C loading gauge, which gives us the ability to use slightly bigger rolling stock that is a little closer to the 1520, also slightly more efficient in loading. So we'll have passenger services, which you can see in green. There'll be the freight services, and most of those are shown in yellow. They will extend. The passenger services are also anticipated to extend to beyond Poland. Night train services are an obvious option that people could offer on the same infrastructure. And also, as you'll see from the small symbols on the map, or the diagram rather, we'll have direct interconnection with airports, with intermodal freight terminals, with seaports, both for passengers and freight, and also freight level integration with the 1520 rail. There will be some stations where there are both 1520 and 1435 rail as well, so passengers will also be able to interchange. And as I said at the start, this is a complete greenfield opportunity. We also have to consider what is innovation in our context. We are scheduled to start launching services from 2026 onwards, so we don't have a long timeline. There's a limit to what we can realistically hope to deliver in that time frame. And from our point of view, innovation is not the same as research and development. And we look at the technology readiness levels. Alex referred to the rail industry readiness, very, very similar scheme, basically level 7. So it has been deployed and tested elsewhere, and we'll see what can be enhanced. Perhaps technology transfer from other industries, maybe that's things that have been done in the automotive sector, as has already been mentioned, but also maybe it's things from the IT sector, maybe it's things from telecoms. Maybe it's things from oil and gas, who have a lot of experience in managing widespread remote sites with very clever analytics. Integrating those ideas, integrating those technologies, we'll run demonstrations and evaluations to validate concepts, leading to recommendations or decisions for implementation. And we have, as I said, an opportunity to look at what will people need in the future. You know, the rail planning cycle is based in decades, not years. I quite often speak to IT audiences who will view 2 to 3 years as being very forward-looking, very forward planning. Let's say they're often quite surprised. But we look at areas where we can improve operations. So whether that's more intelligent systems for multimodal integration, whether that's open standards and data sharing, whether it's individual sensors, whether it's machine learning and predictive maintenance. We have, for example, a picture of a UAV that could be used for incident response. We need to think of future developments. What is the infrastructure likely to need to support in 2030, in 2035? What's coming down the line, if I can say that? That will be autonomous trucks, whether it's a tractor within a freight terminal just pulling semi-trailers, whether it's a fully autonomous truck doing last mile, last 10 miles, last 50 kilometers. And then there's a concept of alternative fuels. What infrastructure is needed to support electric trucks, electric cars parked at a station, charging infrastructure, and so on. If the Hydroflex concept is implemented within our infrastructure, we will be electrified, but it's not impossible that we'll have hydrogen vehicles coming on to the infrastructure. What supporting technologies are needed? How could they be implemented at the same time as mainline construction, or at least space reserved? And then things like physical internet. What is the overall logistics marketplace likely to look like 5 or 10 years from now? So we have a set of objectives to look at data-driven operations, to look at smarter maintenance, to look at more sustainable options for IT. Everything is data-driven. It's important that the IT doesn't itself consume all the energy that is saved by having more efficient operations. If data is being moved around, it has to be trusted. We want to use open specifications where we can, mostly because that makes for easier integration, but it also creates opportunities. If a specification is known or standardized, then a research team or perhaps even a startup with a good idea can look at the standard and say, we can work with this data. Let's take this forward from there. And again, because we're so much of a forward-looking project, we have to look at the scope to evolve. We have to look at whatever is put in place in 2025 needs to be able to evolve in 2030 without a forklift upgrade. All of those things, that standardization, the specifications, if you like, the disaggregation of some components, can increase the supplier market, and as I mentioned, can create new opportunities. That disaggregation is also key to long life, to sustainability. You swap out the components that need to be swapped out, not entire infrastructure. No forklift upgrades. So as an example of the areas that we're looking at, I think the first thing to say is that all of our design work, all of our build and as-built is in a BIM environment. So we will have the design data, we'll have the as-built base data. We can then mix in data from different sensors, whether that's fiber optic, distributed acoustic sensing, generating terabytes a week, whether it's a weigh in motion sensor or video, for example, video capturing images of the hazardous materials warnings, and whether it's point or small sensors that are just doing one specific factor, one specific metric in one specific location. All of that data need to be integrated. And if we can, we'll look to do that with off-the-shelf tools. And again, open standards and systems, define the interfaces, define the data specifications, disaggregate the overall system using standardization, using open interfaces. We're looking at things like auto ID concepts. So every fixed or reusable item will have a unique ID. Obviously, rail vehicles have wagon IDs, vehicle IDs. They can be tracked. They can also be embedded in RFID tags, so you can have automatic vehicle identification as a train goes along the infrastructure, which means you can correlate the sensor data with a particular train or even with a particular vehicle. So you could perhaps have early warning of a fault with a wheel on a specific freight wagon. Tell the wagon keeper that you need to do something about this. Locations can be uniquely identified. Load carriers such as shipping containers, roll cages and so on can also be identified. These IDs can all be identified and confirmed at every step in a process. So you can from that have a centralized repository with real-time tracking of every asset, whether it's mobile or fixed, whether it's to do with service, whether it's to do with maintenance. All of those events can be captured. And again, open interfaces where possible. There are standards for RFID, for vehicle identification, it's ENs 17230. There are also standards for data interfaces, for data interchange, on that kind of event-based info. And then obviously we have the use of streaming data and event-based systems and analytics. Sensor data comes in, needs to be cleansed, validated, and then aggregated. We can have as much data as possible, but if no one can use it, then it's collected for no point. Some data will be static or slow. That might be the design data. It might be service patterns, so a timetable changes fairly slowly compared with things like the load on a particular section of track on a particular day. When you have all of that data, you need to consider the architecture, the services for the analytics. What else can you do? I'm not going to go into what is a Lambda architecture, what is a Kappa architecture, what are microservices. That's probably more appropriate for an IT audience. But you can look at real-time dashboards, you can apply machine learning and AI and statistical process control. So you can have target window for particular values, monitor that your operating railway stays within those windows and start to look at continuous improvement, Six Sigma, whichever those frameworks is appropriate, could be enabled. And again, we are seeking to enable things in the infrastructure. We will not be an operator. We're not going to be the infrastructure manager. We have to enable the things that those people may want. All of those things lead to better lifecycle optimization, easier maintenance, whether that's a real-time digital twin of the entire line in operation, whether it's faster or smoother incident management. So I mentioned a UAV, but also if you have that real-time vehicle tracking, you also have real-time tracking of hazardous materials. In the worst case, you can tell the first responders what they're going to encounter, or if there's a particular wagon in a train that they need to look out for. You can do what if analysis on the infrastructure. What happens if we increase line speed? Will the infrastructure support it? Predictive maintenance, look at reliability engineering and lifecycle optimization right from the start. Make sure the tools are in place from day one. And our key themes: learn from elsewhere, enhance and integrate what we can, optimize the infrastructure for the future while keeping as open as possible, support new services with the kind of technologies that I've touched on, and overall create opportunities both for our region and for people far beyond. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Andy. You literally are building the digital railway, aren't you? There's quite a few questions in the chat, which I'm probably going to mainly save for the end. But the quick one is about when you're finished, what are the travel times between Warsaw and the cities in the Baltics? And if I can supplement that, what sort of frequency are you looking at in terms of trains per hour?
It depends. The frequency on the TPH depends on the routes. There are, in the operational plan, there are different routes that we've taken into account. But I'll just say, please remember that we're delivering the infrastructure. We won't be operating the services. So we're planning for potential services. I can't give you a commitment that those services will actually be commercially run. The target journey times are Warsaw, I'm afraid, is the one I don't know off the top of my head. But I can tell you the best example I know is at the moment, Tallinn to Riga by road is 4 hours 30. We're looking at that being 1 hour 45 or so. We're looking at between 4 hours and 4 hours 30 between Tallinn and Vilnius, so within the region. I believe the Warsaw target time is around 6 hours. I would have to check that, I'm sorry.
Thank you very much. I mean, compared to current journey times, as you highlight, that's transformational.
Yeah,
so,
and I've done the Tallinn Riga a lot by road, and 4 hours 30 to less than 2 hours is amazing.
Thank you, Andy. I'm sure the audience appreciate that, and as I say, there's lots of questions to ask you when we get to the Q&A session at the end. So thank you very much, Andy. Moving on now to our next speaker. Can I introduce Markku Vutilainen? I apologise if I've got the pronunciation of your name wrong, Markku. Markku is the Senior Inspector, Finnish Transport Infrastructure Agency, and is going to talk about how 5G-based FRMCS can offer railway communications in the future. Over to you, Markku.
Okay, thank you very much, David, and good morning from sunny Finland. Yes, I named my presentation what the 5G can offer for the railway, because we might have slightly different targets than the main 5G users are. I think the 5G is already a reality, but the definition and standardization of this future railway mobile communication system is still ongoing. And the goal is to get something ready for 2022 TSI specification, the revision what will be released then, and the more comprehensive package are planned for this 2025 TSI revision. I have gathered here typical characteristics which are often connected to 5G. Ultra reliable, low latency communication, which will boost mobile broadband data beyond 10 gigabits per second. And does this picture on the right side present our future when those massive MIMO is used in our cars and trains? But what does 5G really mean for the railway? What are the real requirements for the railway operational, interoperable, safety-related communication, and how to implement the communication services in the most cost-effective way? My task have been to study these matters, and I would like to keep all possible implementation options open so far. And the default alternative is of course the railway private FRMCS network, like GSM-R networks are. Other alternatives might be purchasing prioritized services from hardened public network, possible together with the public safety authorities, or any combination of public and private networks. The public mobile networks and the safety broadband network and also FRMCS will be using the same 5G technology first time ever. I think this enables new and versatile way for different kind of cooperation models in the future. What are we going to do in Finland will, of course, depending on the coming TSI revision and real market offering. This presentation focus on the railways private FRMCS network alternative using 900 MHz frequency band. Let's see if usually when we are planning some change, sometimes the first question is how much it will cost and how long it will take. Our main goal was to get first estimation of the minimum investment cost for the FRMCS network, which is based on the minimum number of base stations. We made a radio network nominal plan and simulation for part of the railway network in rural and urban areas and calculated the result for the whole rail network. The capacity requirement was 100 kilobit per second, not this broadband per train, and it was selected to offer similar narrowband services than we had in GSM-R network. This also includes the future need of the ETCS level 2 and 3 positioning and ATO the grade of automation 2, the narrowband services. The main idea was to compare 5G network to GSM-R network. Would we reuse the base station sites? We have used here the same radio network double coverage principle that what we have been used for GSM-R against the single point base station failures. FRMCS 900 MHz frequency band greenfield implementation is possible in Finland because we are not using it now for the GSM-R. And I think Andy mentioned that they have the similar situation in their project. We have assumed that the FRMCS cap radius higher output power can be used in the future, and the base station are using remote radio units. In addition, some increased noise emission from adjacent frequency band has been taken into account in our study. I think the other parameters are as much as possible similar than used with GSM-R. Public mobile operators are using quite high mast in rural areas, and we have shared the mast for the GSM-R network. Therefore, you see here much larger cell coverage range compared to the many other GSM-R networks. At the low antenna height, the cell coverage range are much shorter, and in urban area, we are using different propagation models than in rural. If you are wondering why the same mast height gives different cell sites. Here is the presented the simulated area which represent the typical rail network terrain in Finland. In the following coverage pictures, the yellow colors means a certain reference signal receipt power, which in uplink direction represents 100 kilobit requirements. And the red color represents 5 megabit in uplink direction. When all base stations are on, the double coverage principle increase the cell throughput, and near base station is it possible to get 5 megabit per second or even higher throughput in uplink direction. This picture presents situation when every second base station is switched off. Due to the double coverage, the basic narrowband services are still available, but you can see the different effects to the cell throughput. Actually, this shows how 5G is functioning. It can provide quite large cell size with robust modulation and coding scheme, but in the cost of the throughput. This shows the situation when the second half of the base station group is switched off. This shows the Monte Carlo simulation result of the maximum uplink throughput distribution in the network when one user gets the whole cell capacity. This shows that even 75% of the track length has more than 5 megabit in uplink direction when all base stations are functioning. This the data capacity drops significantly when every second base station is switched off. For example, 5 megabit video transmission from train is only possible for the part of the track. I think this is one requirement or wanted function for the FRMCS. The data throughput is much higher in downlink direction, and even more than 1 megabit per second is possible almost 100% of the track length. And even when every second base station is switched off. Yeah, here are some findings. I think the key findings is that it should be possible to reuse the existing GSM-R base station sites also for FRMCS 900 radio network. How much capacity network can offer is very much depending on how the GSM-R network was planned and built. 5G network planning shall be based on defined capacity requirement both in uplink and in downlink direction. And downlink can offer much more capacity than in the uplink. But then does it really make economically sense to build the real broadband services by using only FRMCS frequency band when public mobile network operators have much more frequency band available? The answer is, of course, depending on the MNO's interest to offer communication services for the railway. The red dot in this picture represents the base station sites with mast, which can be shared based on the local legislation rules. So the cooperation will be done with the MNOs in any way. This is the final picture illustrates how 5G radio network interface has been optimized for the downlink direction based on the public mobile network behavior. The maximum downlink capacity when using 5 megabit FRMCS frequency band without MIMO can be close to 30 megabit per second and uplink direction around 20. But the uplink direction limits the practical cell radius, and on downlink direction the cell radius can be more than 100% longer, or at this limited cell edge point there is still 50% downlink capacity available from the maximum cell capacity. Okay, how to transfer the communication from FRMCS if you cannot use it in 900 megahertz band? It's an interesting question, and I have no good answer for it. And there are some other maybe possible future subject for discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Markku. Clearly a huge amount of value in the feasibility study that you've done from a huge amount of valuable technical information there. I'm not going to ask you this question now because we need to sort of try and stick to time, but just a flag, I'd like to ask you in the panel session at the end, I'd like to ask you a little bit more about what you see as the business case for rolling out FRMCS in Finland beyond just the obsolescence of GSM-R. So what are the wider benefits of that rollout? So if you be ready for that question later, but thank you, Markku. I'm sure the audience really appreciate that insight into the work that you've been doing. So I'm going to move on now to our next speaker, who is Paulo Duarte, Executive Director of the Portuguese Railway Cluster. And Paulo is going to talk about what I would translate as Railway 4.0. Paulo, are you online?
Yes, I am. Good afternoon. Good morning, let's say.
Good morning.
Not yet. Let me share my screen.
Over to you, Paulo. Looking forward to hearing.
Okay. Let me see if it is the... Okay. So once again, thank you very much for the opportunity to present ourselves and what we're doing in Portugal in terms of research and innovation. Starting from the beginning, who are we? Definitely, we are the Portuguese Railway Cluster that has today 80 members that are part of companies, small and medium and large companies, academia, operators, infrastructure managers, associations. So the clusters have themselves inside themselves the ambience, the needs, and the skills to provide innovation and research in order to achieve results. And that's, I think, it's the main goal of innovation. So Portugal has been in deep crisis for several decades because in fact the governments didn't realize and decided that railway was something to invest, and so we have been decades stopped without any evolution. And so the cluster has started, it was born in 2015, recognized as cluster in 2017, so a pretty young entity, but with big ambitions. And on those ambitions, what we think that the best way to catch up the need of the improvement of the railway solutions and systems definitely is on innovation. And so that's why we have put our vision, our mission that development, RID projects, innovation, it is a must, something that we need to be very, very focused all the time. And so with this in mind, we have realize and proceed on the selection of 8 main areas that should be our structural projects, our innovation projects: rolling stocks, attractiveness, communication, control, intelligent and sustainable infrastructures, energy efficiency, freight interoperability, knowledge management. These in a way that we can upscale our internal skills, and being the cluster, the entity responsible for the coordination of the opportunities in place. This in order to direct these skills, this vision, in order to, at the end of the day, put them on the market, put them on the business, because it is the best way to guarantee that it will have a future. And so with this in mind, we have signed an agreement with the Portuguese government in 2019. It was a sectorial pact agreement where we have defined the main areas, the main objectives, the main procedures that we want to achieve. And so to us, this sectorial pact agreement, it is a strategic tool for the development of the Portuguese railway sector. First, focus on research, as it should be, according with our vision, development and innovation. Push up for the national technical skills that we do have, but they are not focused, not aggregated, they're split in several companies in several different focus and objectives. Then support and aggregate as a cluster all these value chain of the railway sector in order to going with the same goal, with the same objective, and all together in order to achieve faster the development and the innovation. And so these two to promote our national railways system, and at the end to internationalize the Portuguese companies and the Portuguese products and services that are coming out from research and innovation. So with this in mind, we are very caring about projects that can push for all the innovation system. And so we have been a candidate to a mobilizing project that we have challenged our associates, our members, in order to participate. So in perspective of getting a cleaner, more efficient and pleasant railway transport with reduced costs, flexibility, streamlining operations with predictive maintenance, along with the today's tools and ambitions for the sector, acting according with the must-have digitalization process as deep and as far as possible, and always caring for safety, security increase, critical safety and protection. And with this in mind, we have challenged our 80 members to participate. 22 of them have come forward. And so we have start this process that we have called Ferrovia 4.0, that in fact Ferrovia in Portuguese means Railways 4.0. And so this project has started with these objectives in mind: develop multiple tools, systems to be tested in real-time environments, improving competitiveness, quality of service and performance. So railway system sustainability, reducing operation and maintenance costs, empowerment, reliable information systems, safety circulations are the objectives of this project. Going into detail on this project, once again called Ferrovia 4.0, it is intended to be intelligent, sustainable, and innovative railways system. Has a project leader, a national company, FASEC. It has a 8.4 million euros investment preview, and has an incentive of 5.2 to the 22 consortium partners. So it has started in the 1st of July 2020, and it will end in 30 of June 2023. It is a 36-month project. We have been very, very supported by our national operator, CP, Trains of Portugal, that in fact is allowing us to put in place the improvements, to do the testing of the solutions being developed, and it is definitely very, very important, this support from the Portuguese Railways CP. These 22 entities participating in the project, 9 are private companies, 12 entities from academia and research centers, all coordinated, all together under the umbrella of the Portuguese Railway Cluster, putting together the consortium and going along and pushing for the high-level objectives and high-level strategic point of view to push for innovation, as previously referred. So this project is divided in the, 5 PPS. In fact, the first one, railway systems sustainability. The second is maintenance solutions, critical safety and awareness system, communication and cybersecurity, to at the end do demonstration and results integration, being the Portuguese Railway Cluster responsible as well for the project management for these 36 months. Going into detail, in fact, we want to be as much innovative as possible, using the new sustainable materials for the rolling stocks, incorporating the new technologies and functionalities and rolling stock subsystems like seats, ceiling, floors, providing always the information to the railways operator. In a massive and easy installation of sensing devices, also using the drones in the process of monitoring the railways infrastructures as well as the railways rolling stock products, in a way that could be monitored and do predictive maintenance as well. So also energy, it is a concern, because in fact there is, in fact, railways, it is a huge argument that we can use, that it is very, very power energy saving. In fact, eco driving solutions, it is a must that we need to address and to achieve sustainable results. Augmented reality technologies are also is part of this project in order to can do this maintenance and especially do it remotely, and also using intelligent decision support mechanisms to integrate data and all the sources in a way that we can have a real-time information about what's going on and where do we want to go. So new services on board, teleoperation, new communication, new monitoring technologies in a way that we can have innovative and better railways. In terms of global solution, not going into deep detail later, I believe this will be shared with you, and so you can go into details, but basically all the PPSs are integrated in a way that coming together with an improvement in a way, an innovative way we manage and we will deal with railways. Going on the PPS railways, the PPS1 railways system sustainability. So the objective is develop a demonstration of energy and environment sustainability to obtain efficiency increase, lower ecological footprint, and longer lifetime cycle. This is part of the ambitious solution in a way that we can address the Green Deal, that it is in fact a huge objectives that we can only address it and be able to answer in time with innovative solutions. So eco-driving interiors equipment, lightening the train itself in order to do not spend so much energy, trains, microgrid monitoring and control systems, substations, microgrids, also part of the investigation to be done in this Ferrovia 4.0. On the maintenance solutions, also using new point of views, new systems, using new technologies like augmented reality or accurate fault tree established in order to allowing a remote monitoring of the rolling stock systems. One example for it is a spectrum, a sound spectrum analysis of the noise that train does during his way. If it has a change in the pattern of that noise, that sound is sent to the cloud processing solutions in order to identify by that new sound generated can be compared with a sound database available, indicating and predicting which problem it is taking place at the moment only by hearing the sound that has been changed on the train rollment. Remote monitoring, remote infrastructure, business intelligence systems, backup systems to support the project. Safety is always a must, also part of this project, managed by a central platform to detection and analysis of critical security events, and never forgetting the cybersecurity that every day is going to be a huge problem that we will be facing and more detail, and so it's something that we need to attend from the scratch. So the activities models, and then the PPS for communications and cybersecurity, as already explained. The architecture of the project and activities, and once again the final global physical architectural. So we have facing now a huge responsibility. Today, the challenge of the Green Deal is opening a huge opportunity, because in fact it will provoke a huge demand for railways services, and will provoke a huge demand for new infrastructures, for new railway stock to respond to this increase. And so we have a huge responsibility to attend in time to this huge need, to this situation that we are facing to increase the production of the railways, all the value chain of the railways solutions. So thank you again for inviting Portuguese Railway Cluster, and I'm at your service for any questions you might place later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Paolo. I'm afraid no time for questions now. We'll pick up some questions at the end. I'd just like to flag one that would like to ask both you and Alex, which is, I think a lot of the challenges that you're trying to solve are internationally recognized, so there's a real risk that we're solving them multiple times all around Europe and the world. And my question is, which we'll pick up at the end, is the scope for more collaboration in that respect. So I'm now going to introduce the next speaker, which is actually me. And I'm going to very briefly give a bit of an overview of an initiative that the Railway Industry Association runs in the UK called the Unlocking Innovation Programme. So Okay, I have control of the slides. So we're doing this in partnership with Network Rail, the infrastructure manager in the UK, and Ukraine. And the important point here is that it's open to all. It's free. It's free to participate, and it's open to everybody. You don't have to be a member of RIA to, for example, to participate in the Unlocking Innovation Scheme. What we aim to do is promote innovation and connect businesses together too. So we're trying to be in the middle of that pull and push that Alex talked about. So a perfect Unlocking Innovation meeting or workshop is where you have customers with challenges, the pull in the room, and suppliers with solutions, the push in the room. And we just let serendipity happen, basically. We run about 5 events a year around the UK. What does an event look like? It's a high energy thing. It's keynotes, it's workshops, it's elevator pitches, which are sort of 3-minute opportunities for typically SMEs or indeed clients with challenges to pitch the issue to the audience. It's an exhibition, and the key to it is loads and loads of networking. The example on the right-hand side there is Dura Composites, who came to us before when they were thinking about getting into the rail industry. They knew nothing about the rail industry, and they engaged with the Unlocking Innovation Programme. And long story short, they now have a significant part of their turnover in the rail industry through the networking and so forth that they were able to build up. So we've been running this for quite a long time now. We were running a series of events called Made in Britain, Materials, Automation, Data and Energy, for a couple of years. And since the pandemic, we haven't stopped. Normally the events would have been physical events, but the last 3 events on this chart are virtual events that we ran. And actually, you may not be surprised to learn, if we would get 100 to 150 people at a physical event, we're getting 300 people at a virtual event. What are we doing this year? Well, we've already done 2 events, Building Back Better and Whole Systems. And coming up, we've got data-driven maintenance, Railtex Infrarail, climate change in October, and a showcase for Network Rail's innovation program in December. And as I say, they're open to everybody. So how do you find out more and get involved and sign up so you know when the events are coming, and also so you can look at the back catalogue of the recordings of our virtual events? Well, the simple thing is you go to RIA's website, and there's a purple sort of low symbol at the top right-hand corner that says "To Unlocking Innovation," and that takes you to a dedicated website, and you can look at the back catalogue, and you can sign up to attend an event, you can sign up to give an elevator pitch, etc. So I just wanted to give you a quick overview of what we're doing to try and stimulate innovation through Unlocking Innovation. Okay, thank you very much. I won't ask myself any questions. I will go straight on to introduce the next speaker, who is Dave McGorman. Are you online, Dave?
I am.
Excellent. Good morning. So Dave is for Unipart Rail, and you're the director of the technologies business in Unipart Rail, but I think you're going to talk more generally about the challenges and opportunities of introducing new innovations and technology in rail. So no small challenge there. Over to you, Dave.
Thanks, David. Quite a mouthful of the title as well, so apologies for that. I appreciate we're running slightly behind, so I will go through these at a pace. The slides will be available so people can download them or come and ask. What I'm going to talk to everybody about is just a brief background and update on who Unipart Group is, because we'll know who Unipart Rail is, but Unipart Group is a bit different. Challenges of introducing innovation, the importance of understanding your clients' needs and what they perceive their needs to be, and obviously the opportunities that fall out of innovation. So the reason I put this slide up, which is our group, which is circa 8,000 staff, nearly $1 billion turnover. It's one of the UK's largest privately owned businesses. We'll be familiar, a lot of the people watching here will be familiar about who Unipart Rail is and what's encompassed in that. But recently, last August, we set up a new division called Unipart Technologies Group within our group. And this is separate to rail, separate to manufacturing, logistics, international, etc. And it was really a realization from us that to succeed, we really need to set ourselves up right and structure ourselves. And the businesses in there are instrumental. One I'm sat at today, which is a condition monitoring business. Metlace, which is a joint venture with Rolls-Royce, is around smart jigging and more of a manufacturing business. Part signaling and comms design, which is very much around signaling solutions. And then we've also got Unipart Digital and a couple of other bits in there. And it's really we're seeing a lot more growth now. We're set up better to tackle the markets, and that's both in rail and any industry. So really looking at how you're structured can really help progress things quickly. In terms of the slide, I have to admit I stole this from Alex, so thanks, Alex. And this is really about the RIRL level. And I wanted to say where Unipart Rail play in it. So Alex identified this gap, and from our perspective, we work very early on with partnerships. We're part of Ukraine as an industrial sponsor, but we also work with universities and support research, whether that be funding PhDs, whether that be funding research programs, or actually funding professors, etc., to look at where we're going. We also play in that gap space and the industry investment space by acquisition. So whether that be minority investments or whether that be total acquisition. And then clearly one of our spaces as a tier one supplier is route to market. So we do a lot of that later on as well. So challenges and barriers we see from introducing tech and innovation is there's a number of things. These are just typical comments that we hear, whether it be about too much risk, innovation being expensive, it being a safety critical industry, therefore you can't innovate or put things in, which is true in our industry, but also that innovation can still play in that space. Too much data, so it makes no sense. We've always done it this way, so why change? And clearly change can be difficult and very scary. So it's something that there are challenges about introducing innovation and technology, and this isn't just in the UK. This is globally. You'll hear this throughout the piece. So different territories are typically at different times in their journey, but they all find this change very difficult. So this is a guiding philosophy that's Unipart Groups, and this was established in 1974, and it was really about understanding the real and perceived needs of our customers better than anyone else and serving them better than anyone else, which sounds very wordy and people thought was a little bit outdated and wouldn't be applicable with digital technology. But I think it's more relevant now than ever before, because I think it's quite important, essential really, to understand does your client want to know its engine temperature or coolant level or charge air pressure, or actually does it really want to lower its engine maintenance or reduce its downtime or increase its operational efficiency? So technology can be quite confusing. There's lots of different acronyms and buzzwords in there, from RCM to Wi-Fi to CBM, etc., that to our clients don't necessarily translate. So it's really important to set yourself up, but then also translate that to your client and understand what it is, what problem they are really trying to solve. And for us, that involves producing actionable information as opposed to giving lots of data, and actually trying to solve the need as opposed to introducing the innovation technology, which I realise is quite perhaps the wrong space to say that, but that is really important for innovation and technology to succeed, is to make sure that we've addressed those needs appropriately. So opportunities that come from introducing innovations and technology, there's many. I'm not going to run through all of those, you'll be pleased to hear, but effectively a lot of the presentations have the same theme of decarbonisation, lower maintenance costs, operational costs, increased efficiencies, etc. All of these are benefits from introducing new technologies and innovation into the railway, and ultimately, improve performance, reducing operational costs and improve safety. So where do we play in that space? I said earlier on, a lot of it. But from our perspective, it's really about being your partner of choice. And one of the things on the previous slide that is very exciting is about joined up offerings, and new innovations allow things like that. And just as a way of a quick example, one of the ones that we have is a condition-based supply chain, which is about delivering parts and bits to customers based on the condition of them, as opposed to based on ordering them. Now, that isn't possible for Unipart Rail without a number of other companies. It's not possible without Instrumental. It's not possible without a number of our suppliers. And so by having the innovation and by having the technology and working together collaboratively, that really helps us offer joined up offerings. You can see there's a whole raft of things that we do and how we can help. And what I'd advocate is really, whether you're an SME or a startup wanting to come to market, or whether you're a Roscoe or a TOC or alike who want to introduce new innovation and technology, we can help with all of that given where we sit in the space. So please come and talk to us about that. As I said before, we are a partner on Ukraine, and actually we're building a new hub in our Doncaster office, which will be to innovate, which will be to display these innovations and actually showcase all of the new technologies. It will be a space that we can change around. It's got a lecture theatre, it's got loads of moving desks in order to look at that. So for me, for technologists, it will be almost like a sweet shop or a goodie shop for people to come and have a look at. And then finally, I wanted to show you, obviously people will have seen this, but change is hard. But we all have to play a part in it. And this is just a cartoon I like to put up because, you know, everybody wants change, and you can apply this to, you know, your lives as well as innovation and technology. Everybody wants change. You ask people who wants to change, nobody, and who wants to lead change, even less people. For this to succeed, as David intimated at the start, it is hard and it needs all of us to play at it. So I would say that we all need to get on board, all need to help push these changes, whether we're, you know, rail industry or technologists alike, and help this industry change and become much more innovative. Thank you. There you go, David. Did I keep it brief enough for you?
Excellent. Well done, Dave. Yeah, perfectly finishing on time as any railway service should. Can I ask the other panelists to put their cameras on, and we'll just go into the Q&A session now. So thank you everybody, and to the audience, please keep your questions coming. I can see some just coming through now. If I can go to, first of all, the second last slide you showed, Dave, about change is so true. And one of the things I always say is that the innovation isn't just about technology, it's often about people and process. So, you know, you might have the greatest new widget, but if the business and the users, the maintenance staff or whatever don't want to accept it, or business processes don't change to accept it, then it goes nowhere. We don't get the benefits. So if I could just ask the panel their thoughts on that. I mean, Dave, if I ask you first while the others get a chance to think about it, then what, you know, is my thesis right? You know, that it's not just about the technology, and how do you as a business make sure that you can position your technology so that it gets accepted and the customer gets benefits?
So you're absolutely right, from my experience, David, and not just here, globally. The example I gave, or something I might talk about, is if you were doing engine monitoring, for instance, on a DMU, you know, measuring 5 signals, 10 signals, 50 signals, and having the coolest tech in the world transmitting back and lots of alerts. That's great technologically and innovation-wise, but if it doesn't lower engine maintenance, it's pointless to the operator. So actually understanding the purpose of what's important to them, does it make their maintenance easier? Does it lower cost? Does it give them more information that they didn't have before? That's important, as opposed to, can you sample 1,000 times a second? You know, it's understanding why it's important to your client.
Yeah, really good point. We've got a client on the line in the shape of Rail Baltica. So Andy, can I ask you your view about how you make sure that you know, the greatest new technology actually gets pulled through to being successful for the end user?
There are a few different considerations. Yes, definitely having technology for the sake of technology is not a valid business case. And having sensors that can measure 1,000 parameters on a particular engine, just to continue the same example, isn't necessarily useful. But we need to look at which sensors are the best value for money to implement. In our case, which sensors are actually better to implement while the railway is being built. So in many cases, and possibly even in most cases, people are retrofitting sensors to existing infrastructure, and we're not in that position. So our perspective is maybe a little bit different from other people, but that's one of the reasons for looking at things like fiber optic sensing. And while the infrastructure is being constructed is the perfect time to put that in, and ensuring that the value for money is there, ensuring the business cases are there, is slightly different when you don't know as much as you would like to about infrastructure management, about railway undertakings, who are the operators going to be. So we have to think from the point of view of both those kind of entities. So in the team in Rail Baltica, we have people with IM experience, with RU experience, with hybrid metro experience, Transport for London, and it's a different balance. You have to look at technology that is useful for as long as you can possibly realistically predict, and avoid overly specifying in such ways that lock you into particular suppliers as well. You know, the infrastructure is going to be designed for 20, 30, 50 years in some cases. It'd be a very optimistic business that said, I will definitely be here in 50 years' time.
Yeah, so you've got an interesting challenge where you don't yet know who your customer in the shape of the IM and the RU are, but you know who your ultimate customer is in the shape of the public. So are you doing, you know, focus groups or some kind of, you know, how are you finding out what good looks like for the customer?
There's actually a focus group exercise going on in the freight market at the moment.
Okay.
To look at whether people want to, just to give you just one example, to look at if people want to move from road to rail, do they want to move semi-trailers as accompanied or unaccompanied?
Okay, that's good.
And those kind of focus groups and surveys, preference surveys are going on, yeah. We've also, on the passenger side, we've had how to integrate airports and rail more efficiently, how to look at, let's call it micro-mobility, the best local solutions, make sure that there are sensible solutions for electric bikes and scooters and so on.
Yeah, excellent. So turning now, I'm going to ask this to Alex and Paolo. There's a question that's been sent to me that is alluding to collaboration, or actually potentially the lack of collaboration in industry. So we talked to every speaker, I think, has mentioned the importance of collaboration, and I think in the academic world the first thing you do is a literature review to find out what's already been done, and the theory is if it's already been done, you don't do it again. There's, across all the speakers, there's some fantastic innovations going on, but is there a risk that we are repeating what, you know, so is there a risk that Paolo's program, Ferrovia 4.0, is solving the same problem as some of the things that you're working on, Alex? And, you know, is the scope for, you know, even within a, so the question arose in the UK, and it might be that Paolo solved this, because the question that was about the UK was saying, is there too much individual innovation at the moment, with every Roscoe train builder, university and supplier doing their own thing? Well, it looks like Paolo's solved that, because he's brought 80 companies together to work together. So question to Alex is, what can we learn from Paolo? And question to both of you, are you actually trying to solve the same problems, and it would be better to agree that you each solve 50% of them, and then we get you know, agree. So over to you. Who wants to pick up those two questions first?
I'll start and then pass over to Paolo, because I'd like to mention that I was a guest of Paolo's at his Portuguese Railway Summit earlier this year. So there is certainly communication, and we are learning more about what each other are doing. And we're also coordinated through the European Rail Clusters Initiative. So we do have channels of communication between our two organisations. So I think the answer, I'm going to do a mixed yes and no answer here. So the answer is yes, there are dangers of people innovating in separate corners. Is that a massive problem? I'm not totally sure. I think there is space for if we look at it from the supply and demand side, I think there are plenty of ideas being generated from the supply side in terms of universities, rail supply industries, actors and others in terms of generating ideas. And I think there's plenty of demand from individual railway networks around the world for those ideas to be then further developed and enhanced for their specific requirements. So I don't think there's a problem with things happening in parallel. I do think there is plenty of space, though, for more collaboration in order to create more effective outcomes, so accelerating the pace of innovation and the chance of it being successful. And that's what I'd like to see more of.
Thank you.
Well,
Paolo,
from my
your thoughts? Yeah.
yes, from my side, hi Alex.
Hey.
In fact, you're absolutely right. First, don't forget we are a very young entity trying to put in place our ambition. Second, we even with the risk of replication, as Alex has said, in fact there is a sense of aggregation of all the chain forward, a learning process that can be developed and in fact take advantage. Of course, at the end of the day, we can't forget the connection with more, let's say, experienced entities as the Birmingham University, in a way that we can see touching points that we can learn from that experience, previously experience. But I would say that this is a process that must be done by every and each one in order to interiorize, to realize what it needs to be done. And it is a learning process, innovation, and something that definitely we need to put in place. I would like to just mention another relevant aspect. The acceleration that our reality has become these late days, it is a tremendous challenge, because the companies, they are not able to come up to date to the speed of the today's life. And so this innovation process inside organizations is even harder. So we need to put in place strategies to develop innovation, especially in traditional companies as areas as railways. For instance, select young students, put it in place, brainstorming and controlled by a senior in a way that new ideas, new push-up can become in place. Because sometimes innovation comes out, but it never gets reality, because the big players, the older, the traditional operators, infrastructure matters, they just don't let they come out. So the innovation inside organizations, it is a must that we need to do immediately in a strategic point of view. In the long term, it will come out with results. I think that it's much more important than the possibility of be replicating and studying the same issues.
Thank you, Paolo. I'm going to ask a question in a little while about how SMEs engage, which might build on the small and medium enterprise businesses engage, which might build on what you've just said. If I can bring Markku into the conversation now. I said earlier, Markku, there was a question in my mind about how or what opportunities you see in Finland and beyond for the business case for FRMCS beyond just dealing with the inevitable obsolescence of the existing system, GSM-R. So how do you see what will FRMCS and 5G unleash for rail customers in your mind?
Actually, this is very interesting question, but it was mentioned already that this railway sector, it's split very much. There we have, I'm coming from the infrastructure owner, then we have a certain, I would say, minimum requirements to be fulfilled and offer services. And then we need to offer the services, we need the communication. And what I presented, the coming new standard for the railway communication that fulfills interoperability and safety requirements. But in addition, all these sensors and I think all other digitalization, it requires communication. And I think now the 5G opens up enormous new opportunities to organize or offer the different communication services, or even the real broadband services. But the question is that what is the business case and who will pay for it? Because we call it also digirail project, where we are developing the framework for the ERTMS, and it includes the ETCS level 3 and ATO and some other things. But the big question is that who will be providing the communication services? And whenever it comes to the cost, then there is like there was the picture, who would like to lead the change? There is nobody want to take the cost. And there is also discussion that how to provide real broadband services for the train passengers. And this is addressed on the minister level, but I think only what is missing is who would finance or pay for the services, because it's not coming like from the mobile operator business, because especially the rural area. And how I explain it, that 5G can have a large coverage, but far away from the base station there is no capacity left. And I think that's a challenge.
Absolutely. But you talked a lot about the potential collaboration between public and private, and especially for the offer to the customer. You know, is there an opportunity there to collaborate with the private MNOs to fill that gap and serve high broadband to customers on trains?
Yeah, because we see that, I think, because our main target is not to build our own dedicated or private FRMCS network if we can buy services from MNOs. And of course, this is what TSI will define, because we don't know yet. Is it allowing? And the other thing is it on cost efficient, and do we get the service availability, reliability, what we require? But I see, because now in the future, everybody is using the 5G technology, even the public safety organization, like in UK, there are this broadband project, and in Finland we have the broadband project that use hardened public mobile network. And this is also, if we need to increase the coverage and capacity along the railway line, everybody will benefit from it, even the passengers, public safety organization and railways.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I see a lot of opportunities, but there are also a lot of limitation that what is allowed to do, and how the other real market offering, and what is the market price. And that I don't know, but I hope that I know in 1 year, because we must make the decision something latest by the end of 22, that what will be our solution for the railway communication network, how to implement the FRMCS based network.
And I don't think you're unique in that. I think there's a lot of people patiently waiting for that. Andy Billington, I think you wanted to come in on that.
I was just about to say, Marco is definitely not alone in that, waiting to see. We obviously, with Greenfield, deploying GSM-R would in many ways be a wasted opportunity. And I think it is quite important that we do look at collaboration. It's a relatively short journey from here to Helsinki. I think it would definitely be useful to look at collaboration across geography. We talked about academia and industry, but I think it's also neighbours can collaborate as well. We face a lot of similar issues.
Well, speaking of,
yeah, sorry, I would be happy. Yeah, happy to cooperate, because we have it within this FRMCS forum among the other railways into Europe. Thank you.
Thanks, Marco.
So Andy, there's a question here, great question, which I'll direct at you first, as you're building a new railway and thinking of the future. So there's a question here about, are railways progressing with the introduction of industry-wide global reservation and distribution systems like the airlines do? So one could book a ticket for a trip using many different railway operators, and could also allow you to integrate that ticket with the airlines and other transport modes. So, there is still, I think, beyond one-off things like Interrail and so forth, there is really not very good transnational ticketing. Is that so? What are your thoughts about that? That must be an opportunity for Rail Baltica, and please, other panelists, come in if you'd like.
Yeah,
but I'm not aware there's any initiative in that area. Are you?
There is, I believe, there's some joint working between IATA and UIC,
Okay.
looking at the differences. I haven't seen any update on it, but I did see a press release, I think, last year. But obviously, there's the different terms and conditions in the different industries apply. So COTIF is different from the air side conditions. So somebody will definitely need to be looking at that. But yet we have a unique opportunity. I mean, we have 4 airports directly along the line. I believe there's a 5th being proposed in Lithuania, and obviously there's the new airport project, or the hub in Poland, which is not going to be that far from the line to be reachable. So it will be an amazing opportunity to look at integrating ticketing, reservations, booking, and all the different aspects, and potentially doing seamless things. And we ourselves have looked at how do you do seamless baggage handling, for example. So the scenario would be if you're flying from Tallinn and you get on the train in Riga, do the bag check at Riga. And can we extend that to having bag check at perhaps the maritime passenger ferry port in Tallinn? So you drop your bag there, it's taken to the station for you, and make that as seamless as possible across all the transport modes. But there are considerations that maybe aren't obvious. The difference between a booking system and a ticketing system, the difference between a ticketing system and a reservation system. It's definitely something we believe we can do. And at the moment, we're looking to make sure the infrastructure will support those services.
It's really positive you're looking at that. But there's clearly a lot, putting myself in, as a passenger, there's a long way to go, isn't there?
There's quite a long way to go. In some ways, it's not as far as it seems. The data standards are better defined now than they have ever been before. Some of the push that's coming from third parties is great because it's forced some of that standardization of data interoperability. And also, in our case, we are 85% funded from European Union funds. So obviously, Green Deal is quite close to our heart. There is a definite push in that context to try to persuade people to use rail instead of air for short-haul journeys. And that only really becomes far more attractive to do that for people if the airport and rail experience is as integrated as we can do.
Thank you. I'm going to wrap up in a minute with a question around SME engagement. But before I do, can I ask Alex if he wants to give a shameless plug for the World Congress on Rail Research? In view, we've been talking a lot about collaboration.
Thank you very much, David. Yes, so I did drop a quick note on the chat. We are co-hosting at the University of Birmingham with the Rail Safety Standards Board, the World Congress on Rail Research, which is taking place the 6th to 10th of June next year, 2022, here in Birmingham, in central Birmingham at the International Convention Centre on Centenary Square, which recently had its tram stop open, so it's very accessible. Information is now available online at the website wcrr2022.co.uk. The call for papers has now been closed, and we are looking for anyone interested in exhibiting, sponsoring, and of course attending to make contact via the website, please. So June 2022, I hope to see you all here in Birmingham for the World Congress on Rail Research.
That's great. Thanks, Alex. There's a follow-up from Krzysztof Semetsky to all the panelists about that question about why not collaborate with the airlines. And he's suggesting that we should, he was asked the original question, and suggesting that we should join up with GDS, which is an organisation I wasn't previously aware of, but what he's saying is GDS providers, which is an airline body, already have their offer for rail operators. And, you know, I would suggest that sounds like a very good idea, because, you know, if we don't collaborate across transport modes, there's a real risk of rail operators being taken out of the equation as others start offering seamless journeys. I'd just say, look what happened to the travel agents. You know, do we want to be in the position that most travel agents are in? So yeah, GDS apparently is an acronym for Global Distribution Systems, and there's a number of them: Amadeus, Sabre, WorldSpan, etc. So that there's a suggestion there for us to follow through on. Dave McGorman, I've sent you an email directly from BASEC asking you a question about whether you interested in railway cable condition monitoring. I suspect you are. You might want to take that up with Jaya Skandamurthy directly, but if you just want to give a thumbs up if that might be of interest.
It certainly is. So yes, I'll take it up directly. Brilliant.
Okay, so my last question to the panel, and I'm going to come to you, Dave, first on this one, is given the work that you're doing with the hub and how you talked about collaboration with other businesses. So the question is, you know, SMEs working in this industry are innovative. I think the stats are that most innovation comes from SMEs. They're very agile. They react to changes in policy legislation very quickly. Their issue, Natalie Cartwright, who's asking the question, says, is making contact with stakeholders. How do they break through the firewall that makes it so difficult to actually tell the industry what we have to offer? And, you know, I would say, you know, my simple answer is join a trade association and get involved, or get involved in things like the Unlocking Innovation event that I mentioned, because that's free and open to all. But that's only part of it. Dave, interested in your thoughts, and other panelists, once Dave has done, please come in.
So I think it's a great question. I think, as you say, there's trade bodies, as you point out, David. Unipart Rail is a tier 1 supplier to the industry. Obviously, you can get in touch with us. And what I would say is, it isn't just about getting hold of the stakeholders. To get hold of the stakeholders, you need to understand the landscape. So in the UK, you need to understand if you want to speak to an infrastructure owner, a Roscoe, so the people who own the vehicles themselves, a freight operator or train operator or maintaining company. Each of those, there'll be different people you'd need to talk to. So understanding the landscape of who you want to talk to and what you want to get out of it is important. I would say, I would just throw in there as a curveball, one of the things that's also a barrier to SMEs that they don't always understand entering our industry is safety is not optional. It's a prerequisite to even play here. So governance, safety, how you comply to work in this industry is often a barrier for SMEs, which needs to be considered before we try and enter it. But understanding the landscape, and then, as you say, talking to trade bodies, talking to academic institutes or to suppliers to the industry would be my advice.
Thanks, Dave. Who else would like to come in on that?
David,
Alex?
I would say just go to a cluster. Because we connect exactly the operators, the infrastructure managers. We improve the flexibility of the SMEs and their creativity, and we put them under the rules for safety. So we put them together. We push for possibilities that they would never have a chance to come up so far alone. But inside a cluster like this Ferrovia 4.0, a 5.2 million euros incentive, definitely all the SMEs that decided to jump in, now they are providing a great work. obviously under control of the safety rules, all the necessary requirements that this industry demands.
That was an open goal for you. Alex, do you want to come in there?
Yes, just very briefly. There are, of course, also schemes like the digirail project that I mentioned, which are funded schemes to give practical support as well to SMEs. And what one point I would also make is, of course, when I talked about innovation, looking at it from a supply side and demand side, that you don't just enter the rail industry with a great product. As Dave said, you've got to hit the certain safety standards. You've got to be aware of the market, but you've got to be aware of what the market's actually looking for, what it actually wants, and what that demand really is. And I don't think it would be unfair to characterize the rail industry as being one that's going to get completely pulled in a different direction by some amazing new technology. This is moving an oil tanker. You aren't going to radically change railways rapidly. Maybe over a long period of time you could, but you've got to be conscious of what the market actually wants and what it can take, and that's a hugely important realization.
And related to that is that the market size for any one infrastructure manager actually is quite small compared to our competitor industries. You know, the number of things we buy as an industry compared to automotive or aerospace is just, you know, a different order of magnitude smaller, which creates an interesting dynamic. Andy, I would just wonder if you've got any, as a project, how do you go about engaging with the SMEs?
At the moment, it's mostly been where we have had a point requirement. We've gone to local industry organizations or the universities and said, are you aware of somebody who's doing this? But we also get an awful lot of direct contacts from people saying, I have something that your project can use. Obviously, this is one of the biggest transport projects in the region, if not in Europe. So we do get a lot of incoming, my product is perfect for you, you should use it. And as I think David said, we have to do a fair amount of, just because it's a good product doesn't mean it can be used in railways. So there's an element of coaching and of trying to say to people, yes, we like this idea, but we have to look at how you adapt it to use it in a railway. Think of life cycles in years, not months. I think the one that is the most frustrating for me is the number of people who come in and have an absolutely perfect cloud-based solution that requires every last bit of railway data to be in their proprietary cloud. To have to say that over and again is a little frustrating at times, but I think it's a sign that most of this data management is ultimately going in that direction. It's a case of sorting out which data can be stored where. And that again comes into what are the safety rules, what are the security rules as well, national sovereignty rules apply and all those things. So you have to take a lot of things into account that maybe most SMEs haven't been exposed to in the past. So there's an education process as well.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I'm going to draw things to a close at that point. We've overrun 20 minutes, but I let things go on because there was a good discussion happening, and we still have nearly 60 people watching. So clearly there's an appetite, but we can't go on all day. Much as I'm sure we'd probably be happy to chat all day, but we can't. So it only remains for me to thank our speakers for really constructive and valuable discussion. So thank you to Rich Love, to Alex, to Andy, to Marku, to Paolo, and to Dave. Thank you very much, everybody, and thank you, of course, to our audience for joining us, for DIT and Santander for organising the event today. So thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your day, everybody.
Thanks. Thank you to you as well.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, David.
Have a nice day to you all.